Hi, it's Kate Brownfield, ACC ADHD parent coach and your host of the ADHD Kids Can Thrive podcast. If you are searching for parent private one-on-one coaching or a parent group community support group, please visit my website at ADHDkidscanthrive.com to learn more about the services that I provide for parents of ADHD kids. Today, I'm excited to welcome Riley Mulcahy, founder and executive director of the Riley Project, a nonprofit building belonging and community for neurodivergent teens and young adults. Riley was diagnosed with dyslexia at age 7, and his own experiences navigating learning differences helped shape his belief that young people need more than support for what is difficult. They also need opportunities to understand their strengths, find their voice, advocate for themselves, and feel that they truly belong. Through the Riley Project, Riley is creating spaces for young people with ADHD, dyslexia, and other learning differences to share their stories, build confidence, develop leadership, and connect with a community that understands them. We'll talk about Riley's own journey, why belonging matters so much for neurodivergent young people, what parents can learn from listening to their children's experiences, and how we can help kids move forward toward adulthood with greater agency and confidence. The Riley Project is also hosting the Belonging Summit 2027 that's coming in the spring of 2027. It's a conference created for neurodivergent teens and young adults and an exciting next step in the Riley Project's work. Riley, welcome to the ADHD Kids Can Thrive podcast. I'm so glad to have you here. Okay, here we go. All right, I've got Riley here, and I am very much looking forward to talking to him and having him share his story with everybody. So let's just kind of dive in, Riley, by starting at the beginning of just sharing with people like what your life journey has been like, and then we'll get into what you do now.
Of course. Thank you so much, Kate, for having me. It's such a pleasure to be on. So, yes, my name is Riley Mulcahy, and I was born with epilepsy. So, I had hundreds of seizures when I was born, and spent some time in the NICU. All of my developmental milestones were delayed, and when I was 7, I was diagnosed with dyslexia, and so my parents really advocated for me to make sure that I was in the right schooling. I was able and fortunate enough to go to Charles Armstrong School and Compass High School, 2 environments that really helped me succeed. And I am a college graduate from St. Mary's and graduated with honors in English, which some people are
I know.
surprised
For
to
me.
hear dyslexic English major, but I really do credit my dyslexia to my writing.
Yeah, that's incredible. And you were actually, when you were little, was it the medical community or the experts, so to speak, thought that you would really have a hard time with your learning to read?
Yes, definitely learning to read, and also I have mild cerebral palsy, so the milestones of walking, I didn't walk until I was age 2 or I was 2 years old, and so really with the epilepsy and cerebral palsy, they weren't even sure if I could go into preschool, but my parents said, "Wait, let's see." And so that combination, especially with the dyslexia, made those early years hard on my parents and hard on me too.
Yeah, for sure. Well, your whole being now as an adult is really about, growing up to be your true self, regardless of what was said in the beginning of your life of what you were going to be capable of, right? And think, for your parents and then just for your effort, you read and you write and you graduated from college and now you're advocating. It's like really an amazing arc and an inspiration for all families. And then you mentioned Charles Armstrong and Compass, which if you're not from the Bay Area and you're listening, right, those are like two main amazing schools in the Bay Area that really focus on kids who learn differently. And do you credit some of like just being create getting into an environment that supported you allowed for your growth to happen?
I think a way to think about it is when my parents were advocating for me, one of the things that a school district said was, well, you know the system. Riley has to wait to fail. We have to wait to see how Riley reacts to not being able to read and not being taught explicitly how to read. And so Charles Armstrong in particular, I credit if I didn't have Slingerland methodology, which is an Orton Gillingham science of reading based methodology and multisensory instruction, I wouldn't have been able to read. I wouldn't most likely wouldn't have been able to write and compass in high school really helped. Charles Armstrong set the foundation, and then Compass, because of the small class sizes and individualized nature, really helped me to thrive. So it's the difference between thriving and waiting to fail.
Yeah. So our public school systems are so it's so frustrating to hear that, right? Again, like they wait until you're failing and then they'll take action. When a lot of these signs for a child, their struggles come up way before there's flags, there's signals, right? That they're going to have a hard time. So it's kind of a shame that the strategy is that we wait for them to completely fail before we'll take action in schools to support our kids. So that's really frustrating. But we move on for Riley. So now you're a young adult thriving on a mission, and you've created a nonprofit called the Riley Project. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yes. So the Riley Project was founded on this belief that there is not enough storytelling for neurodivergent individuals, places and opportunities to have neurodivergent individuals share their authentic stories, share their authentic selves, and really create a sense of belonging and community. And so I started that in a college dorm when I was 21 on a mission thinking, something needs to change. And so that something is the ability for students who learn differently, people who learn differently, and interact with the world differently to have a platform for themselves
To share their
to
own
share their
story.
stories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what do is this just for young adults or for kids? What's like all people who are neurodivergent?
So we started with a focus on students and young adults, and it's really expanded to sort of across the lifespan. We found that high school up, there's more willingness to share their stories, and definitely would love to get into more schools and create groups based on it, but across the lifespan.
Yeah. Okay, so how do we benefit from sharing our stories with each other?
I think so often we're taught, especially when you're diagnosed with a learning difference, that there's some shame that you have to carry. It's not external. Sometimes nobody is shaming you externally. Sometimes, definitely waiting to fail is a form of shame. But this idea that you can evolve. You don't overcome, but you evolve with the differences that you have, and you're able to move forward. And sharing stories authentically really helps with that. This ability to go, here's what helped for me, and here's what I want the next generation to have. Because hopefully, there will be more rights and more abilities each generation
To support
to support.
neurodivergent, but yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And you do a lot of advocacy for that with the people in power, right? You
Yes.
you go there and you advocate firsthand in DC, which is amazing.
Yes, the National Center for Learning Disabilities, I have to give them a shout out. They are doing really great work ensuring that people with learning disabilities K through 12 in college are being advocated for, and I was on their young adult leadership council, and now am able to still be an advisor per se, but so much admiration for their mission and being able to support people who learn differently.
Yeah, yeah, and because these, kids and adults who are neurodivergent are everywhere, right?
Mhm.
They're not in just one particular city or state, they're across the board. So tell us a little bit more about your philosophy that you're developing of like, kids who are neurodivergent, which includes everything, right? You're not discriminating to just kids with ADHD or dyslexia. They may have autism, they're neurodivergent in
Yeah.
some capacity, right? And so how does what your effort doing helping them when they don't feel like they're the only one having a hard time, whether it's in school or with friends or going to college?
Yeah. I think it's this idea, this flip switch of fitting in versus truly belonging. So, right, in asks you to create yourself and be able to interact with an environment where belonging is how do we have an environment that is truly welcoming to all? And so really do believe that in storytelling and building community for neurodivergent individuals and really making sure that we are all encompassing makes people feel like they truly belong and have a place, even if it's reading a story or watching a video, this ability to really interact authentically.
Yeah. Okay, so Riley, how has this helped you in your own life by sharing your story?
I think having this ability to go, hey, school was tough. There were a lot of challenges in my life. I still navigate having dyslexia. It doesn't go away, and you still have mild cerebral palsy. And it's this ability to look back and go, yes, this was tough. Yes, I struggled, but there is a light at the end of the tunnel. So often for kids, there's this worry of, am I going to always be alone? Am I always going to not be able to read or struggle? And it's really this understanding that everybody interacts differently. When you have a label of a diagnosis, people are magnifying it, right? And the flip side of that is because I hear a lot about, oh, I don't want my child to be labeled. I don't want to be labeled myself. And I wish we were in a place where we had a strength based approach to everything and that our laws were correct in that way. But the truth is, neurodivergence, term disability, it gives people protection, and it's really about this disabling environment, not this disabled person, right? It's
Right.
about how we are asked to interact and how we can interact authentically.
Yeah. Yeah. And so giving the voice, right? Having a voice, being able to tell your story, right? Feels so powerful. Okay, so tell us how this mission. I can see it, which is why I'm having you on this podcast. But share with people like why it's powerful for, let's say, your parents, because this is targeted to parents, right? Parents, and you're not diverse or not in a way that's impacted your life greatly, but you have a child now who has this neurodivergence that is impacting them based on the age they are and the way our society and culture is at this moment, right? And it's really impacting them. And why is it important for kids like that to hear voices from other people that aren't like teachers, medical experts, the professionals coming at them like, you need to do this, you need to do that, right? like how does what you're trying to do and your mission really kind of come into play with all of this and supporting children who are neurodivergent and trying to find their way in the world?
I think it humanizes the experience for neurodivergent people where, you know, parents, the moment that there is a diagnosis, they have to become advocates and they have to make sure that the district, the providers, medical professionals are ensuring that there is success for this child. And I think so often what gets trickled down is okay, there's a lot of people talking about me, there's a lot of people talking about my deficits. What who am I as a person? What are my strengths? That does not get talked about enough. And so I think what the Riley Project does is again flips a coin and says, okay, this is what the system is asking, and this is what the system is not doing well. Here is what you, as an individual, a neurodivergent individual, and what your parent can do. And the first ask isn't, please share your story. The first ask is, why don't you read or listen to a story that's already out there? Right. Or here is a quick video from one of our partners, or because I think separating the roles is really important because parents and medical professionals aren't going to be able to necessarily have an authentic relationship that is based on truly the strengths of the child because they're looking at it holistically. They're looking at the deficits, which gives data, and sometimes students just need to know that they're seen and
Yeah.
that they belong.
Yeah. So this is bringing up a question for me, Riley, like more of an observation because there's your project and what you're doing, what you actually are doing, where you're bringing people together in these private spaces to like share their stories and do this. And then I'm like, oh gosh. And then on the other end, there's like social media where people are usually using it as a way to talk about their differences in a way to like drive. It's a different mission
Mhm.
than what you see with somebody, and it's dry, and there people are arguing at high levels, right, that it's driving people to say, "Oh, because the way she or he is talking about ADHD on social media, that must mean I have social media or I must have ADHD."
Right.
And that is a very different dynamic that's happening in our culture than what you are doing. So I do wanna separate that a little bit because this is about you're doing things where you're bringing different people together with different neurodivergence to just share and connect with others and not to like drive business to themselves or something like that.
I would just add that yes, and I would just add that there is such a power in information sharing. And I do know that there is a lot of young people who look at social media and are questioning, and that will always happen. And then there's the business aspect. However, I think what's stronger is okay, how did a student or a parent navigate the IEP process or the 504 process? What tips what was that feeling like, right? So often we focus on, okay, this happened, but what were you feeling in that moment? Because the truth is, so many people are feeling scared or anxious going into these meetings or questioning why wasn't I in the room as a student? And so I think that's really the power. And I think that's what's missing in social media, like
Yeah.
real sometimes, is that there's not this authentic in the room experience, if that
Right.
makes sense.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. It doesn't feel authentic. I think
Ex
people are waking up to the fact that it maybe isn't authentic,
right.
which is all good for the betterment of everybody and also for neurodivergent kids and families who are trying to navigate this. We all kind of wake up to that. Okay, here's a big one. How do teachers and parents teach their kid? this very vital skill of self-advocacy. Like when does it happen? And like what are some ways that parents listening could try to introduce that to their child?
I think that is a great question. I think it's gradual. I think that you don't just start out with a second grader being able to go to a teacher and say, I need and I want and all of those things. But I would say with a second grader, and this was what was so great about Charles Armstrong is okay, how do we start this conversation? How are you feeling right now? What are the barriers or what are you struggling with? And is there a way that you can explain it to me? It doesn't have to be even verbally. Maybe it's a cue that you give a teacher. And then by fifth grade, there's that fun transition to middle school. And then it's sort of thinking about it and, okay, maybe instead of mom and dad starting out the year with with letters or talking to their teachers, it's, "Hey, can I please talk to you, Mrs. Smith, Mr. Smith? I'd really would really like to talk about my need for a computer, using a computer or something." And by high school, it's having those skills where when something arises, you're able to talk about it in an educational setting. I mean, workforce, of course, those are sort of the building blocks, right? But it's definitely gradual. And if any educators are listening and they're going, "Oh my gosh, that's too early or too late," just ideas. I am not an educator. I'm not saying, but just as a simple framework.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's great because I think it's and you're right. There's nuance in it based on who your child is,
Yeah.
what are their struggles, how are they feeling in their environment? Is it, warm and welcoming and feeling safe? And how do they feel about themselves with their struggles? It's a lot, it's everything. But it's important to kind of slowly use your framework because you ultimately want your child's not gonna be a child forever, right? They're gonna become adults, and they need to kind of embrace who they are and take the steps that they need to help themselves. Okay, so for a message for kids, neurodiverse people, adults, like, what is the takeaway that you would like them to learn from today's conversation?
I think that it's this very simple message of even if the world is telling you, you know, you're different, you're struggling, it's really this idea that you are not alone. There are so many neurodivergent people, and what's really important is even if you don't have the ability to see a neurodivergent people in your community, I'm going to guess you just don't know that there are neurodivergent people in your
Yes.
community. And and that there is a lot of power in that too,
Yeah,
right? Because if we siloed ourselves only based on who is neurodivergent or who is not, we wouldn't have allyship. We wouldn't be able to make sure that we had power in certain tables. And so that's definitely just you're not alone.
yeah. And what would you want parents of neurodivergent kids to know and learn from you?
So I'm going to take from the director of academic services or politics interim head of school, Amanda Morin from Compass High School. And she uses this all the time. And it's so great that behavior is communication. So often we can see that children are who are neurodivergent are acting out, struggling, not being disrespectful, all of these things. And it's really important for parents to remember that school for a child who is neurodivergent is exhausting.
Yeah,
The social interactions sometimes are exhausting. There's so much power and there's so much drain that goes on. And so I think that's a really important reminder of like, yes, your kid might look like he or she may have a be having a meltdown, but you don't know what happened in that classroom. You don't know what happened in that setting, and so I think that's really important too.
Yeah, that's great advice. That's great advice. Okay, so if people want to find you, where do they find you? I'll put this in the show notes
Of
too.
course. The rileyproject.org. So we have a place to submit your stories, and we have a collection of stories. Would love neurodivergent individuals to please share. And I believe there's also an educator tab for people who serve students who are neurodivergent as well. And we're online. I'm active on LinkedIn. Um, that's a weird flex, but, we'll go with it. And then,
Hey,
LinkedIn,
everybody's on LinkedIn. A lot of people are on LinkedIn.
Instagram, and it's just if you search up the Riley Project, I will.
Yeah, and you can Google it or whatever. And I'll have it in the show notes too.
Thank you.
So you can
Yes.
everybody can easily find you. So I really appreciate this. This is a great conversation. You are a wonderful resource. And the work that you're doing, I'm sure will just continue to grow as you move forward. And you've got quite a mission ahead of you.